I'm going to record a little podcast based on a New York Times article, mainly with the same title. Has the Carbontech revolution begun? Science can now pull carbon out of the air, so we talked about direct air capture and the cost of that and how far it has to go before it can begin to pull out sufficient amounts needed to meet our global warming targets, like 2 degrees centigrade by 2100 with 66% probability, or 1.5 degrees centigrade target by 2100 with some such high probability. But here, for the DAC to make a difference, though, businesses need to find profitable places to put it. So we've talked about carbon capture and sequestration, and we briefly touched about using CO2 into polymers, plastics, soaps, tiles, and so on. Here, the Carbontech is a broader terminology that is used for production methods and technologies that actually use CO2 to produce things, and this is obviously quite different than what we talk about when we say carbon capture and sequestration. There we are looking for places where captured CO2, let's say from power plants or from the air, can be hidden somewhere for a very long time, like geologic fault lines or old salt mines and so on and so forth. The whole article is focused around this company called Interface Products, which has revolutionized the production of carpets and tiles by making lots of changes in their production methodologies, in the way they use recycled material, and the way they pump CO2 into their product, like carpets, to actually produce carbon negative products. So this is not just carbon neutral, this is way ahead in terms of actually taking out carbon from the system in delivering these products. So this is the company Interface, which actually evolved out of an older carpet company. It's called their tagline, Carbon Opportunity. There is too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As human activity continues to release more and more of it, the natural world is struggling to keep up. At Interface, we believe we have a duty to help solve this problem, so we have invested in product innovation and improved manufacturing processes to lower the carbon footprint of a product at every stage of their life cycle and end up giving you a product that's actually carbon negative. So it's not just about reducing carbon footprint, so they're reducing operational carbon and the carbon life cycle, so in the raw material acquisition, manufacturing, use, and disposal. So there is embedded carbon here and operational carbon on this side, so that is embodied carbon. Okay, that's kind of revolutionary. So essentially it's not just net zero, but this is to help climate by taking carbon out of the system as you are producing. And the idea is that since Industrial Revolution, we have gotten into this extractive economies where we extract fossil fuels, coal, such as coal, and we burn them, and there is no circular economy necessarily associated with them, where you are cycling things through and not just extracting, using them, and producing waste like greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. And several examples exist. I won't go through all of them. LanzaTech is one, which is harnessing the power of biology and big data. Imagine a world where technology recycles waste carbon emissions and makes new products, cleaning our air and giving carbon a second chance. That world exists today with LanzaTech. So they are using biological processes to actually extract carbon. And again, it is to get people to think of carbon as not just a waste product, but actually as something that goes into manufacturing things and is part of the circular economy. Here is Bloomberg Green's article on energy and science. Wanted startups that can turn captured CO2 into vodka and jewels. So there are startups now that are, we will look at vodka in a minute, and even diamonds. They are being enlisted in the fight against climate change. With a little ingenuity, both can be made by manipulating carbon dioxide that's been captured from the air, which means their production could actually help stem global warming. Okay, so this is really, Carbontech is very different than carbon capture and sequestration, where you are hiding CO2, whereas here you are putting CO2 into things like cement, various products, cosmetics, soaps, tiles, carpets, and vodka. So from CO2 to vodka, there is a company called Air Company, which is taking CO2 from the air and producing ethanol at a high concentration. So it's bypassing this whole process in which typically vodka is made by taking starch and sugar-rich grains, rice, corn, potatoes, maize, wheat, and so on, fermenting it, and so that includes a lot of agriculture, land use, agricultural emissions, transportation, and production emissions, and so on and so forth, whereas they are going directly from CO2 to ethanol and then converting it into vodka with some patented technology that we cannot fully obviously list here. So it's the world's first carbon negative spirit. Can enjoy a vodka and also take out CO2 from the air. So that's quite revolutionary. So let's run through some figures from the New York Times article on the interface product. So it is showing here spools of yarn at interface. Materials and processing account for a majority of the CO2 emissions associated with making carpet. The carbon negative carpet backing made by Interface incorporates biomaterials including forestry byproducts and plants rich in absorbed carbon. So here are the materials that go into these backing for the carpet, which actually produces a lot of carbon, but here they are taking out carbon. Here is a tufting machine picture. Adding latex created from smokestack exhaust to the tufted carpet. So you are actually using CO2 into the carpet. So you are sequestering CO2 into the carpet. Here is Barbara Moore, who is a tufting technician working here on her craft. A roll of carpet ready to be finished with carbon negative backing, which locks in high levels of carbon and cancels out the emissions related to the rug's material, production, and life cycle. Okay, so there are lots of little things taken into consideration at every step. So it's not one big game changer that is doing this. They have modified the processes at every step to create this carbon negative tiles and carpets. So this is yarn loaded onto fixed creels. I suspect I put the wrong figure in there, but nonetheless, collecting product scraps at interface to reuse in carbon negative backing. So there is the recycling going on as well. And this is Lonnie Murphy, a team leader overseeing carpet being cut into tiles. So you could well be walking on carpet in buildings or universities, wherever, which is actually sequestering carbon and helping fight climate change. This is Kathy Boykin, a seamer transporter. So there is the role of seamer that's being transported. Okay, so that's just the interface product details, but you get the idea that Carbontech is really about making CO2 from just being considered as a waste product into something that is part of the circular economy. So we have far to go. Of course, it's not the amount of carbon being sequestered is still not large enough, and this is not going to be a silver bullet by any means. So we still need all those combinations of renewable energy, direct air capture, and other methods of going to net zero, as we looked at the IEA report in the previous podcast, and Carbontech as part of the game as well, where it is sequestering carbon into products that we use in daily lives. Of course, something like wood used for buildings can sequester much more carbon away by using trees, which naturally sequester carbon and put it in a building that'll stay there for decades, maybe even centuries. So we have a podcast on that in the drawdown lecture about using woods for buildings, and it is becoming more and more common, and Norway has a huge building now, which is a model for showing how someday skyscrapers are going to be built with wood. There is no reason to think only concrete provides a safe multi-storied structure. So skyscrapers, wood is equally capable of doing that, and there is no need to worry about fire and so on. There are ways to protect against fire as well. Okay, so that's the broader context for Carbontech based on this New York Times article. Okay.